It knew my brother's name. I never said it out loud.
Marcus Cole, 34, solo hunter, no partner, no team, no backup plan. Used to teach high school history in Columbus, Ohio. Normal life, normal job, the kind of existence where the worst thing that happens on a Tuesday is a broken coffee maker in the teacher's lounge. Then his younger brother Danny vanished. Danny was a construction foreman, good at his job, careful, experienced. His crew was hired to do preliminary demolition work on an old property outside of Zanesville, a condemned farmhouse, routine job, nothing unusual. Danny went in alone to survey the basement on a Wednesday morning. His crew waited outside. After 40 minutes, one of them went in to check. Danny was gone, back door locked from the inside. No footprints leaving, no body, no explanation. The police spent 3 weeks on it and closed the case as unexplained disappearance. Marcus spent the next year on it and found something else entirely. Something that made the closed case make a different kind of sense. He's been hunting ever since, alone by choice, or what he tells himself is choice.
I've been doing this long enough to know what a real story looks like. Hiding inside a normal one. Most people read a missing persons report and feel sad. I read one and start asking the wrong questions. The right questions, actually. Just wrong to everyone else. 5 years ago, I was a high school history teacher in Columbus. I had a mortgage, a bad fantasy football record, and a younger brother named Danny who could build anything and fix anything and never once asked for help with either. Danny disappeared on a Wednesday morning from a condemned farmhouse outside Zanesville, Ohio. Locked room, no footprints, no body, no explanation. The police had a file. I have a different file now, thicker, with different kinds of answers in it. None of those answers have led me to Danny yet, but they've led me to a lot of other things that needed dealing with. It was a Tuesday when I found this one, sitting in a diner outside Knoxville, 2 cups of bad coffee in, scrolling through local news the way I always do. Not because I enjoy it, because something in 5 years of this work rewired the part of my brain that used to think the world was mostly explainable. Now, I scroll police blotters and county records and small-town newspapers that still post their archives online for free. The headline wasn't dramatic. It rarely is.
Local teen missing after trespassing incident at closed Hargrove State Hospital. Hargrove State Hospital. Closed 1994. Rural eastern Tennessee. About 40 miles from anything you'd call a city.
1 kid missing. 1 kid hospitalized. Described in the report as experiencing a severe acute psychotic episode, which is clinical language for he came back wrong. I ordered a 3rd coffee and kept reading. The missing kid's name was Tyler Marsh, 19 years old. His friend, the one they hospitalized, was named Devin. Devin had been found standing in the middle of the main hallway, completely unresponsive, staring at a wall. When the paramedics touched his shoulder, he attacked them. Not panicked, Not scared, methodical, like something was using him. Tyler had last been seen heading toward the south wing. Nobody had gone back to look properly. The police report listed it as a trespassing case with a tragic outcome. The county had been trying to demolish Hargrove for 6 years and kept running out of budget. I paid my check, left a tip, and pulled up everything I could find on Hargrove State Hospital before I even got back to my car. Here's what I found, and it took me about 4 hours of digging. Through digitized newspaper archives, a university library database, and one very helpful forum post from a local historian who had clearly been sitting on this story for years, waiting for someone to ask. Hargrove State Hospital opened in 1961. Standard mid-century psychiatric facility. Red brick, long corridors, the kind of architecture that was designed to feel institutional because the people who built it thought that was therapeutic. Spoiler, it wasn't. For most of its history, Hargrove was unremarkable as these places go. Overcrowded, underfunded, the usual problems. But the South Wing was different. Officially, the South Wing was designated for severe and treatment-resistant cases. Hospital administration, language for the patients nobody else knew what to do with. The ones who had been transferred from other facilities because those facilities couldn't manage them anymore. The ones with violence in their files. The ones who had hurt people, staff, other patients, themselves, badly enough and often enough that the standard wards had run out of options. In practice, the South Wing was a locked ward inside a locked building. You needed 2 separate sets of keys to get through its main doors. The windows were reinforced with steel mesh, not just bars. The rooms had padding that had been installed, removed, then reinstalled after an incident in 1974 that the records describe only as significant property damage and injury to staff. This was the ward Voss requested when he arrived in 1968. He said it was because the most severe cases were where his research mattered most. Maybe that was true. Or maybe he knew that whatever he was going to do in there, the South Wing was already designed to keep the outside world from hearing what happened inside. The South Wing was Dr. Harlan Voss's domain from 1968 until 1989. Voss was, by all external accounts, brilliant. Published papers, attended conferences, had a reputation in the field as someone genuinely trying to advance treatment for severe trauma disorders. What he was actually doing in that South Wing was something else entirely. Voss believed that the human mind, under sufficient psychological pressure, would eventually break through its own defenses. That if you pushed a person far enough into their deepest fear, past the point where the brain could maintain its walls, something would reset, crack open and heal correctly, like a dislocated shoulder. Pop it out, pop it back. The difference is that shoulders don't have nightmares. For 20 years, Voss ran what he called immersive exposure sessions on the patients in his ward. In practice, He studied each patient's history, identified the specific thing they were most afraid of, the exact image, the exact memory, the exact wound, and then he put them in a room and he worked on it for hours, sometimes days. The orderlies who worked that ward didn't stay long. The ones who didn't talk much. For 20 years, Voss kept the south wing locked down tight. The patients didn't mix with the rest of the hospital. They ate separately, exercised separately, were kept, in every practical sense, completely isolated from the outside world, from other patients, and from anyone who might ask the wrong questions. It couldn't hold forever. In the fall of 1989, something broke. The exact sequence of events was never fully established because almost everyone who witnessed it was either dead, institutionalized, or not talking. What the official record shows is this. On the night of October 14th, 1989, the patients of the South Wing of Hargrove State Hospital staged an uprising. Not a spontaneous outburst, not a few people banging on doors. An organized, coordinated riot. Think about what that means for a second. These weren't patients from the general population. These were the most dangerous, most volatile people in the building. People transferred here because other facilities couldn't handle them. People with violence already in their histories. People Voss had been systematically dismantling, fear by fear, wall by wall, for years. And somehow, in spite of all that, or maybe because of it, they found each other. It started sometime around 10 p.m. A patient named Gerald Marsh, no relation to the missing Tyler, had been in Voss's program for 8 months. Gerald was 6'3", institutionalized after an incident that the court records described clinically as extreme violence resulting in grievous bodily harm to multiple individuals. Voss had been working on Gerald's specific terror for 3 months straight. Whatever was at the bottom of that man, Voss had been digging toward it every session. That night, Gerald stopped letting him dig. He got through the door of his room. No one has ever fully explained how, though the leading theory is that a night orderly left it improperly latched, and he went straight for the guard station at the end of the corridor. The orderly on duty was a man named Pete Garza, 26 years old. Pete did not make it home that night. 3 more orderlies responded to the alarm within minutes. 2 were overwhelmed before they reached the corridor. 1, a man named Richard Tully, who had worked the South Wing for 6 years, and who, according to colleagues, had always said the place made his skin crawl, was found the next morning at the far end of the hall, 15 feet from the emergency exit. He'd almost made it. The patients had keys by 10:15 p.m. Every door in the South Wing was open by 10:20. 31 patients, 1 ward, 90 minutes of chaos before the county sheriff's deputies got the building secured. By the time it was over, 11 patients were dead. 4 orderlies were dead. 3 more staff were hospitalized. 1 of them never recovered enough to work again. 9 patients were found elsewhere in the building. in varying states that the reports described carefully and said little about. And Dr. Harlan Voss was gone. Not fled, not escaped. Gone. His office was found locked from the inside. They had to break the door down. The room was empty, no sign of struggle. Just his desk, his shelves of research books, and his leather journal sitting exactly where he always kept it. The official investigation lasted 3 months. The official conclusion: Dr. Voss was killed during the riot, and his remains could not be recovered due to the chaos of the incident. Closed case, sealed files. But when I dug deeper, really dug, into the county coroner's records, the burial documentation, the death certificate that should exist for any confirmed fatality, nothing. No coroner's report for Voss. No burial record. A death certificate issued 3 months after the riot, signed by a county official who retired 6 weeks later and died of a heart attack in 1991. Think about that timeline. 15 people died in that building on the night of October 14th. Every single one of them had a coroner's report, a file, a paper trail, except one. The official story was that his body had been lost in the confusion of the incident. 31 patients, 15 dead, 90 minutes of chaos, and somehow, in all of that, one specific body just ceased to exist. I've been doing this work for 5 years. I know what a cover story looks like. The patients hadn't lost the body. They'd hidden it. Deliberately. Carefully. Together. The same way they'd organized the riot itself. Somewhere deep in that building. Somewhere they knew the staff would never look. Because that was the whole point. They didn't just want him dead. They wanted him to stay there. Trapped in the place he'd trapped them. And if his remains were still inside those walls, so was he. The town nearest to Hargrove was called Millhaven. Population, around 2,000, give or take whoever had left that year. I got there on a Thursday afternoon and checked into the only motel. 12 rooms, a vending machine in the parking lot. That only accepted exact change, and a proprietor named Earl, who looked at my out-of-state plates with the particular wariness that small towns reserve for strangers arriving alone. I told him I was writing a piece about abandoned state institutions for a regional history magazine. I've got business cards for 6 different jobs. Pick one. Commit to it. Don't blink. Earl told me, without my asking, that the hospital was bad news, and that people from out of town who went poking around it tended to have problems. I asked what kind of problems. He said,
"The kind where they come back different."
I thanked him, took my key, and went to find the sheriff. Her name was Linda Pruitt, mid-50s, sharp eyes, the kind of calm that comes from either wisdom or exhaustion. Usually both, in my experience. She didn't buy the magazine story for a second, but she didn't throw me out either. She told me about Tyler Marsh, still missing, and about Devon, who was now in a psychiatric facility in Knoxville, and who, according to his doctors, had no memory of the night at all. Blank. Like someone had taken an eraser to a specific 3-hour window. I asked about Voss. The sheriff got quiet in a specific way. Not surprised, not defensive, quiet like someone who had been waiting for that name to come up for a long time and still hadn't decided what to do with it. She told me that her uncle had been one of the orderlies, injured during the riot of '89. Broken arm, 2 cracked ribs, concussion. He survived. Most of the staff did, but he never went back to work in psychiatry after that night. Took a job at a hardware store in Mill Haven and stayed there until he retired. She said he used to have nightmares for years after. Her mom mentioned it once, then never brought it up again. I asked her if he'd ever said what happened to Voss, where the body went, who moved it, who knew. She looked at the table between us for a moment. Then she said,
The patients knew every inch of that south wing, Mr. Cole. Every room, every closet, every space Voss had ever put them in. They lived there. Some of them had been there for years. If they wanted to hide something, they knew exactly where.
She pushed back from the desk and stood up.
I can't tell you anything official. I can't help you officially. But if you were going to look somewhere in that building, I'd start in the south wing, 3rd floor, where it happened.
She said,
Whatever you find in there, don't tell me about it.
I told her I'd do my best. She gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was going to do and had decided, officially, not to know about it. That's as good as a blessing in my line of work. Before I went in, I needed more than a ghost story. I needed a method. Here's something people get wrong about this work. You don't just walk into a haunting and figure it out as you go. Well, you do, sometimes, when you're stupid or desperate. But the smart play is to know your specific ghost before you face it. Because ghosts aren't generic. They're not interchangeable. Every one of them is the specific leftover of a specific person, shaped by whatever they were in life and whatever anchors them after death. What anchored Harlan Voss? I spent the afternoon at the Mill Haven Public Library, a single room with a librarian named Beth, who gave me full access to the local archives. The moment I told her I was researching Hargrove, turns out she'd been cataloging that history for years. Nobody had ever come to ask about it. Beth had a box. Inside the box, newspaper clippings, copies of internal memos. That had been leaked to a local reporter in 1991, and the thing that made my stomach drop, a photograph of Voss's office in the South Wing, taken during the police investigation in 1989. The office was meticulous, everything in its place, shelves of medical books, a desk with nothing on it but a lamp, and one object, a leather-bound journal. According to the inventory taken by police, the journal contained Voss's session notes, 20 years of documented experiments, every patient, every fear he'd identified, every session. It had been logged as evidence. Then somehow, in the transfer between county sheriff and state investigators, it had disappeared. No record of where it went. I looked at that photograph for a long time. Then I thought about what I knew about ghosts and what keeps them here. Most of the time, it's the body, the physical remains, unburied or disturbed. But sometimes it's something else, an object, the thing they clung to, the thing that was most them. For Harlan Voss, his research wasn't just his work. It was his identity, his purpose, the thing he believed in so deeply that he was willing to destroy human beings for it. If that journal was still in that building, still in his office all these years, then it wasn't just a notebook. It was the second anchor. And I'd need to destroy both. I went in at midnight. Not because midnight is magic, because that's when I finished preparing. The hospital had been locked and fenced, but 30 years of neglect had made that theoretical. The East Wing had a section of collapsed exterior wall. That gave me access to the inner corridor system. I had a flashlight, a crowbar, and a backpack with what I'd need. No firearms. Not because I couldn't have brought one, but because bullets don't do anything for this kind of problem. The building was quiet in a way that wasn't natural. Outside, there'd been wind. Inside, nothing. Like the air had forgotten how to move. The hallways of the main building were the usual wreckage. Overturned furniture, water damage, that specific smell of abandoned spaces that I've never gotten used to, and probably never will. I found the stairwell to the 3rd floor and started climbing. Here's what I want to tell you about that stairwell. Halfway up, I heard my brother's voice. Not a recording, not a memory playing in my head. His voice clearly saying my name,
Marcus.
from somewhere above me. Exactly the way he used to say it when we were kids. And he'd find me in the woods behind our house. I stopped. I stood there for about 15 seconds. Then I said, out loud, to nobody, I know what you are. And I kept walking. It didn't stop. The voice followed me up the stairs and down the corridor toward the south wing. Sometimes it was my brother. Sometimes it shifted. My mother, my father, sounds from the night 8 years ago that I have never told anyone about. Voss was good. Even dead, he was good. He'd been reading me since I walked in, finding the frequency. I focused on the floor plan I'd memorized. South wing, 3rd floor, room 17, then his office, room 22, at the end of the hall. The south wing was sealed by a heavy door, padlocked. The padlock was new. Someone from the county had put it on recently, probably after the incident with Tyler and Devon. I'd brought bolt cutters. Took 30 seconds. The south wing was different from the rest of the building. The main halls were decay and chaos. The south wing was almost preserved. White walls, white floor, fluorescent lights that had been dead for decades, but somehow still felt present, like they might flicker on. Small rooms with reinforced doors and narrow observation windows. The voice in my head went quiet when I crossed that threshold. That was worse, somehow. I found room 17. The door was unlocked. Had been unlocked, I guessed, since 1989. Nobody had bothered. Inside, A chair bolted to the floor with leather restraint straps, hanging open like empty hands. A small table. A mirror, cracked but intact. And in the corner, behind the door, a section of the wall that didn't match. Newer plaster, different color. The kind of repair job someone does in a hurry when they need to hide something and don't have time to do it right. I took the crowbar to it. The plaster cracked and crumbled. Behind it, a hollow space about the size of a large suitcase. And inside the hollow, wrapped in what had been a canvas drop cloth, now rotted to almost nothing, remains Harlan Voss, hidden in his own room. Whoever had put him here, an orderly, a hospital administrator, someone who'd needed this to disappear, had done it fast and done it once, and then never come back. I stepped away from the remains and went down the hall to room 22, Voss's office. The journal was still there, sitting on the desk, exactly where the photograph had shown it, 35 years later. Leather cover dried and cracked, but intact. I picked it up. The temperature in the room dropped immediately. Not a chill, a plunge, like stepping into a freezer. The mirror on the far wall fogged over, and in the fog, a shape. I won't describe it in detail. I'll just say it looked enough like a person that the part of your brain, wired for human recognition, went off. And it looked wrong enough that every other part of your brain immediately started screaming. It moved toward me. Not fast, deliberate. The way someone moves when they don't think you can stop them. I held up the journal. It stopped. I don't know exactly why I knew that would work. Instinct, research, whatever. Sometimes in this job, you get a feeling and you trust it. The journal meant something to it. More than the bones, maybe. The bones were just biology. This was everything Voss had believed about himself. I opened the journal and I started tearing out pages. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds simple. But I want you to understand what happened in that room as I did it. Every page I tore, the shape in the mirror reacted. Not like pain, like loss. Like watching someone destroy the only thing. That proved your life meant something. The cold in the room deepened. The walls groaned. I heard voices, not just mine this time. Other voices, the patients, layered on top of each other. And underneath all of them, something that might have been screaming and might have been silence. I kept tearing. 20 years of session notes, 20 years of experiments. Every fear identified, every session documented. Every person Voss had taken into that room and broken. I tore it all out, and I piled it on the desk, and I lit it. The fire caught immediately. The old paper went fast. The shape in the mirror distorted, stretched. And then I went back to room 17. I didn't use salt. I didn't use any of the usual playbook. What I used was simple. I pulled the remains out of the wall, and I buried them. Right there, in the south wing, in a section of floor where the concrete had crumbled and the soil underneath was exposed. I dug with the crowbar. Took about 40 minutes. Said nothing while I did it. Some remains need burning. Some just need burial. Real burial, intentional burial. The thing that was denied them. Voss hadn't been buried. He'd been hidden, stuffed in a wall like something shameful. I buried him with his name spoken aloud, which is something an old woman in Louisiana taught me to do years ago, and which I've never stopped doing, even though I can't tell you exactly why it helps. Harlan Voss, 1932 to 1989, buried now. When the last shovelful went down, something lifted, not dramatically. No light, no sound. Just a weight I hadn't noticed I was carrying. Suddenly wasn't there anymore. The building felt like a building again. Empty, cold, just walls. I was back outside before 4 a.m. I sat in my car for a while in the parking lot of the old hospital. Left the engine off. Just sat. Tyler Marsh was still missing. I hadn't found him. No remains in the building. No sign of him in the south wing or anywhere else, which meant either he'd gotten out some other way and was somewhere alive and confused, or what had happened to him was something separate from what I'd just dealt with. I didn't know. I hated not knowing. I left an anonymous tip with the sheriff's office at 4 a.m. An address, a description of the sealed room, the hollow in the wall. Let them figure out the rest. Let them find whatever they needed to find. As I pulled out of the lot and onto the county road, the sun wasn't up yet, just that dark gray before dawn, when the sky is less dark than it was. But not yet anything you'd call light. I thought about Devon in the psychiatric facility in Knoxville. I thought about whether he'd ever get those 3 hours back, or whether they'd just be a gap in his life forever. A space where something had used him and left. I thought about my brother, not in the way the voice in the hospital had made me think about him. Not as a weapon, not as a wound, just thought about him. The way he laughed, the way he always fell asleep on road trips when he was supposed to be navigating. I turned on the radio, some classic rock station out of Knoxville. Something from the 70s. I didn't catch what. It was enough. I drove.